Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at one of the undercard stakes races on Whitney Saturday at Saratoga. Race 6 is the Grade 3 Troy Stakes, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf course for older runners. This is a race for males generally, but the morning line favorite as we take a look at this field is the female Caravel, who has beaten the boys before, did so in last year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, more recently in the Grade 1 Jaipur, and she figures to go off as one of the heaviest favorites on this Saturday card. I pegged her at 3-5 on the morning line as she does come in off a series of victories. Among her main competitors are the number 7 Nobals, some improving sprinters like Cogburn and Remuda. So we'll go through this field to see if anybody might have a chance to upset this heavy favorite. Before we get to the main contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector to see how this pace could shake out in the opening 2 furlongs and where Caravel is placed. And as you can see, Timeform US has her on the front end, but with some company in the early stages of this race. This pace projector captured after the opening quarter mile, and you can see on either side of her, she's got a couple of rivals, the number 2 Ikigai, as well as that number 7 Nobals, both runners that have plenty of early speed. So we'll see how much pressure Caravel has to deal with in the early stages of this race. If the pace really does heat up, note that the number 1 Thin White Duke does get that LP flag on the Timeform US pace projector, indicating that he has the highest late pace rating in the race and should be finishing fastest of all. And let's begin with the number 1 Thin White Duke, as we'll take this field in post position order. We'll check out his PPs in Timeform US, and he's just a cut below some of the main competitors from a speed figure standpoint, usually earning numbers in the low 1 teens. But this is a horse who has had his fair share of excuses in recent starts, going all the way back to that elusive Quality 4 back in May. Didn't get the best trip that day, had to deal with traffic at multiple points. Then when he was beaten by Caravel in the Jaipur 3 back, was just wide most of the way. That was not really a race that favored horses closing from towards the back of the pack, and he was just out of position for most of the race. I thought he ran fine 2 back, and then last time didn't get a whole lot of pace to close into, but was finishing well going this distance. He's run some of his best races at Saratoga, going this 5.5 furlong distance in the past, even winning a stakes up here last summer, though this race has probably come up quite a bit tougher than that one, given the presence of Caravel. The number 2 is Ikigai, and he's a horse coming off a pair of turf sprint victories at Monmouth. Both of those races were earned against weaker company. He did win in gate-to-wire fashion, setting a slow-paced 2 back. You see those blue color-coded pace figures in Timeform US, but I like the versatility that he showed last time, being reserved off the pace, faster situation up front, and he was able to close into that pace to again win by a clear margin over 2 lengths. Again, he's another horse that just doesn't have the speed figure power to really be competitive with the top contenders to be a win candidate in this race, but he is one that appears to be coming into this Troy in good form. Let's check out the replay of the number 3 Cogburn in his last race when he won a turf sprint stakes race at Lone Star. And both of his last 2 races have come at Lone Star, getting back on the turf. These both 5 furlong turf sprints. And you can see Cogburn is last turning into the stretch, but he is going to mow this field down, closing down the center of the course. The runner to the inside of him kind of gets re-engaged as Cogburn makes that big rush to the finish, and those two hit the wire together, with Cogburn just getting his head in front at the wire. That 117 Timeform US speed figure, not quite as high as some of the numbers that he's earned on dirt early in his career, but he has transferred that dirt form over to turf recently, coming with good late runs to win each of those 2 races at Lone Star. And it's kind of interesting that he's changed his running style on the turf, because he was a horse that possessed quite a bit of early speed on the dirt, but in each of the last 2 turf races, he hasn't broken that sharply. He actually hopped up at the start last time, which put him so far back in the early stages, and he's been able to produce those closing finishes. I'll be interested to see if he's more forwardly placed in this Troy, if he's able to break more cleanly, because he definitely does handle the turf. It's just a big step up in class from the kind of company that he's been facing in his last couple of starts in Texas. Let's move on to that morning line favorite, the number 4 Caravel, and we'll check out her last victory in the Grade 1 Jaipur. Like I said, she was beating males this day. She'll face males again, once again, in this Troy Stakes, and there's no, no way getting around it. She was beating a better field last time than she faces here. It was a Grade 1 race, and she was finishing ahead of the likes of Big Invasion and Casa Creed, who are considered some of the best turf sprinters in the country. And you could see Caravel is just able to hold those closers at bay as they come onto the wire entire. She got a great trip that day from her outside post position, got into her customary stalking position, just in the clear the entire way. She's also capable of running on the front end, as she's done in a couple of her prior starts. She won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint in gate-to-wire fashion last year, so Caravel has that versatility that just makes her very dangerous in these races, and she's earned a series of speed figures in the low 120s that just put her a cut above most of the rivals in this field. The one vulnerability that I will point out with Caravel is that she hasn't looked quite as dominant as she did last time in some of her prior starts. We saw her only able to win by a head off the layoff 3 back at Keeneland, and going back to last summer at Saratoga, the last time that she lost a turf sprint was over this course in the Caress in July of 2022. Now, she got a pretty rough trip that day and had a legitimate excuse, but she also did not look quite in top form when she even won the Smart and Fancy after that. So we'll see if she can produce one of those top efforts over this Saratoga turf course in 2023. Moving on to the number 5, Grooms All Business. Let's take a look at his last race at Monmouth in the Get Serious Stakes, and he got a great trip on this day. There was a 3 duel on the front end. He sat off those battling speeds and was able to tip out at the top of the stretch to run by them and then hold off the closers in the late stages. You can see he's drifting out a little bit in the stretch here as the others kind of go back towards the inside, and he finishes in the center of the course, but he gamely holds off a horse, Our Shot, who's pretty good, and that's been a key race that gets serious, as both Our Shot and Aragona, who finished right behind him, have both come back to win races in their next starts. Our Shot won a stakes level allowance race recently at Saratoga, and Aragona came back to win the Wolf Hill Stakes at Monmouth next time out. So it's been a strong race that Grooms All Business won last time. He's still going to have to take a step forward from a speed figure standpoint, but it does appear that he's really heading in the right direction and has improved during his 4-year-old season. The number 6 is Mr. And this is a horse that has run some nice turf races in the past. He ran that big 123 time Formula speed figure when he won that turf sprint at Fairgrounds over the winter by 6 lengths. Wasn't as competitive when he stepped up to Stakes Company next time, beaten easily by Caravel in the Shakertown. They went back and forth between turf and dirt in his recent starts, but I liked his last race getting back on the grass. He won pretty convincingly at Ellis Park, but did so against weaker company, claimed out of that race by Jason Barkley, so going out for the new barn this time. This stable doesn't have the best numbers first off the claim, and they've picked a pretty ambitious spot to debut for the new stable, so Mr. a bit of a long shot in this race. The number 7 is Nobals, and let's take a look at his last race when he won at Horseshoe, Indianapolis. He went off as the heavy favorite this day, getting bet down to 4-5, a far cry from the price he was 2 back when he upset the Grade 2 turf sprint to Churchill Downs at odds of 38-1. But he merited respect off that victory against a good field at Churchill when he came back in this last race, and he validated the form because he won now 2 in a row, and you could see was a confident winner of that race. He got a challenge in mid-stretch, but kicked on once E.T. Baird asked him for run. He set a fast opening quarter that day as he really got challenged in the opening stages of that race by a longer priced rival to the outside and was able to hold on. I also liked the speed that he showed 2 back when he beat that strong field at Churchill Downs, running fast every step of the way after a slightly tardy break from that rail post position. The start is going to be critical for Nobals because he sometimes is a step slow away from the start, and some riders in the past have elected to rate him or get him in a little bit of trouble after that. We saw when Irad Ortiz was on him last year in the quick call when he ran at Saratoga last summer, didn't break that sharply, and he elected to rate this horse off the pace. That's not Nobals' best running style. He's best when he's on the engine the entire way, and I think E.T. Baird probably learned something about him last time, so I would expect Nobals to go forward, and he's the one horse in this race that has earned those low 120 time Formula speed figures in each of his last 2 starts that would put him within range of the favorite Caravel, so we'll see if he could hold that form against that tough rival in Miss Troy. And then drawn on the outside post is the number 8, Remuda. Let's take a look at his last race at Laurel Park. Again, this was another horse that's coming up in against weaker, off a performance against weaker company. He beat Allowance Company this day, winning by 3 lengths. So a decisive victory in a turf sprint. You always want to take notice of horses that are able to win by these open lengths margins in these turf sprints. And that's probably why his connections have the confidence to step up in class into this graded stakes race. I mean, there's not too much to knock about this horse's form. He's 2 for 2 on the turf. He's run well on the dirt as well. It seems like he's really found a home sprinting in recent starts. but this is a tall order, stepping up against graded stakes rivals like Caravel and some others. So I think Remuda is going to need another step forward as he's now third off the layoff for trainer Owen Hardy. Let's throw out my picks for this Troy Stakes. And look, maybe I'm a little foolish trying to beat Caravel once again. She certainly proved me foolish in the past as I've taken a few shots against her this year. But she's just a horse that isn't winning by margins that make me want to take another short price on her. And she is going to be a very short price in this race. And the number 7 Nobals, it seems like he's really found himself this year for trainer Larry Avelli. Now as a 4-year-old, he's coming into this race in great form with comparable speed figures to the favorite. So what figures to be a much better price, I'll put him on top. But Caravel, definitely the one to beat in this Grade 3 Troy on Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.